Hello, listeners. It's Mallory Wilsey, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network, and I want to take just a moment to tell you about another show on Enrollify that I know you'll love. Mastering the Next is a cutting-edge podcast exploring the future of graduate, online, and non-traditional education through the lens of technology and artificial intelligence. Staying competitive in the world of graduate student recruitment and enrollment means keeping up with the ever-evolving tech trends in higher ed. Join Dr. Ray Lutsky, VP of Strategic Partnerships at Element 451, as he explores what's next at the dynamic intersection of student recruitment and leading-edge technology. Each episode will explore future trends and the technologies shaping the academic landscape of the 21st century. Listeners will be equipped with strategies to meet the evolving needs of today's online and non-traditional learners. New episodes drop every other Friday, and you can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search Mastering the Next wherever you get your podcasts. They're just trying to communicate as widespread as possible. But this enrollment leader acknowledged that the real work is actually right now being done at the individual level. And that is just, resource constraint times 8,000 at that point or however many undergrads, right?
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Higher Ed Pulse, your Monday morning energizer covering insights and trends in higher ed marketing and enrollment. I'm Mallory Wilsey, bringing over 15 years of ed tech and marketing expertise to your earbuds.
And I'm Seth Odell, joining the Pulse with my own adventures from leading marketing at top universities to founding Kanahoma, one of the industry's fastest growing digital marketing agencies.
Each week, we bring you the kind of insider insights you typically only find over cocktails with your pals at a conference.
It's fast, it's fun, and it's designed for you, the busy higher ed professional.
You're not just listening to another podcast.
You're checking the pulse of higher education.
Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher ed professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Welcome back to the Pulse, everyone. Seth, it is great to see you.
Mallory, it's great to be seen. It's great to see you too, but it's great to be seen. I used to have a board member at my last job who always said that. Every time it's great to see you, he'd say, it's great to be seen. And I don't think I understood that, but now I'm turning 40 this summer. And so I'm starting to understand it is good to be seen. It's just, it is great to be here. Great to be pumped, tied in, ready for another episode. And you know what? It's great to see you, but it is also great to be seen.
It's wild. This must just be a joke that 40-year-olds understand. I don't know.
Maybe it is. We'll have to find out.
All right. Well, you know what? We are talking about a topic, Seth, that we've actually avoided for many, many weeks.
Yeah.
And we have not only have we avoided it, we've actively avoided it. We've brought it up and said, no, we don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. Well, guess what, listeners? The time has come. Seth and I are finally going to talk about the FAFSA fiasco.
We are.
We've had a lot of people ask us about this, and we just can't ignore it anymore. I think I decided, Seth, when FAFSA Fallout is literally the first item in the navigation on Inside Higher Ed's site, it becomes a topic we can no longer ignore.
Agreed. I think, well, as obviously the topic today is going to be really focused a lot around, deposit deadlines. And so this is, from the marketing and enrollment side, I think FAFSA is even bigger, obviously, than recruitment. This is like an industry-wide conversation about how this has happened and how it's been allowed to happen. I think for us, it's finally at a point where we got to talk about it because we're talking about deposit deadlines. And how about you? People on my side, I had 3 conversations with clients in the past week, very in-depth, multiple meetings all about this. And so it's kind of come home to roost as far as are we going to be able to sit and recruit students at a rate that meets our plan? Or is this year going to be another anomaly and another almost weird little COVID bubble, but this time around, self-inflicted from the FAFSA fiasco?
Yeah. So I assume our listeners haven't been living under a rock, but just in case, the TLDR version of this, the FAFSA went under redesign. It was supposed to simplify the process, but there were technical problems and some operational missteps that led to a lot of unresolved issues. It prevented the widespread processing of financial aid applications. I'd say the political landscape probably hasn't helped either. So all these resulting delays have just caused chaos, significant disruption that has left students and institutions confused, in limbo, unable to finalize financial aid packages. And of course, this is particularly detrimental to low-income and first-generation college students. So even as now college commitment deadlines have passed and high school graduation rates are approaching, the data collected through March 3rd is indicating that FAFSA completion rates are still 20% lower than this time last year. Some students are still correcting errors in their form or waiting for their financial aid packages to come through. And there are experts out there who are actually predicting that schools might have to shut their doors because they will not have enough cash on hand come this fall because of this whole conundrum. And Seth, we are not financial aid experts, which is primarily why we've been holding this one at arm's length, but we do know marketing.
Absolutely.
And I think what we're here to talk about today is, what our marketing communication colleagues on campuses can do to help solve some of these problems and what needs to happen in the next 3 to 4 months in order to, make sure that these impacted students have a path forward, but also so that schools can feel like, right, they don't have to shut their doors, that they can actually hit their deposit deadlines. So you've had some conversations, Seth. Tell us about them.
Yeah, so we've had, several clients that we've had extensive conversations with, some multiple meetings about deposit deadlines. This is sort of where people are starting to quantify how big of a miss we may have year over year or to plan when it comes to recruiting traditional undergraduate students. A lot of folks have, whether it's May 1st, May 15th, June 1st, there's deadlines related to depositing, which is really when you sort of find out, how serious things are. And what we're finding is there's obviously a serious problem. Most partners are experiencing some type of gap. Some it's significant double digit, some it's smaller, but we're seeing the gap. And so, the first thing I would say is to everybody listening, if you're experiencing too, the first is don't panic. This is largely industry-wide problem. And so, it's scary, but being scared didn't help anything. And let's try to not panic and cause panic internally. I'm not hearing panic from our marketing and enrollment partners, but I kind of am picking up on it peripherally from the campus side. Folks are really worried. Budgets that are normally locked in March are now totally still open, and people working on contingent budget plans because they don't know what's going to happen. I think the biggest thing we need to do is first understand the nuance of the situation. The first is that for the most part, everybody's involved in this and that everybody's impacted. The second thing is that even if your institution has done everything you can, meaning that you have successfully packaged your students and they've received aid, there's oftentimes a lot of students that are waiting on aid from other institutions, which means even if you've done everything you can, students are waiting to make a decision because they're waiting on somebody else. And so that's the nuance of this problem is that we had the first problem was can we get everybody packaged and can we get out what we need to? Now that institutions have cleared that hurdle, they're realizing not everybody has. And so students are waiting to make a decision. We're also hearing anecdotes that, there's high school counselors and folks that are encouraging students to either wait or consider community college. And so unfortunately, based on the high school cycle, those counselors are looking to have students make decisions typically before they break for their own graduations. And so there's been a sense that there may be a push in some areas of actual high school counselors encouraging students to, not select a 4-year institution and to go to a 2-year, which is interesting. And then the other thing I'll say is that we also have to keep in mind that even if we can push deposits, and in a minute we'll get into what can you do to push deposits? Because that's what we need to figure out right now. Even if you can, we had a client partner of ours say yesterday that deposits don't mean the same thing this year. And I thought that was really powerful because they're hearing anecdotes of students that are doing double deposits because they're not totally sure. And if it's only a few $100s, they're willing to spend that money. And so I think melt is going to be a much bigger problem this year than in the past. And so, yes, it's all about pushing to deposit. But even if we can get to deposit, and we'll talk about how in a minute, I think the deposits aren't going to necessarily mean the same thing and be as firm as they have been in the past. And so to me, It's a matter of how do we push deposit, how do we increase yield, but how do we decrease melt, and how do we keep people engaged? And how do we do that at a time when our past nurturing cycle is changing? So like the big problem some of our partners are facing is if you do a time-based nurture series, meaning that like, oh, here's the dates that we push, suddenly all those dates are moved. So like you have to rebuild all your email sequences. Like it's not small. And so the lift on enrollment and marketing is pretty significant. And so, across the board, hot mess is a very fair phrase to use, I think, for what it feels like for most of us right now in the traditional undergraduate recruitment process.
Hey, it's Mallory. Exciting news. I'm hosting the Engage Summit in Raleigh on June 25th and 26th, and I'd love to meet you there. Together, we'll dive into the mind of the modern student, what fires them up, how they interact, and what they expect in today's digital age, and how tools like AI help put them in the driver's seat of their education. We have some terrific speakers, including our closing keynote, New York Times best-selling author Jeff Selingo. Sessions will dig into practical ideas and innovative strategies to get your team more student-centered and ready to adopt AI. And many of your favorite Enrollify hosts are presenting too, like Jamie Hunt, Jenny Lee Fowler, and Brian Gross. Use the discount code Enrollify50 for an extra $50 off your registration. Learn more and register at engage.element451.com. We can't wait to see you there. Well, most higher ed professionals are so thinly resourced as it is. Adding just this extra layer, like you just said, of the step of having to go back and review all of your communications. And some of those are probably printed on, flyers or postcards all the way to your email workflows, et cetera. Just the work involved in like triple checking those communications is significant, let alone going as far as one-to-one communication, which I really think this requires. I was talking to an enrollment leader yesterday who said that they're leaning on some mass marketing to their accepted students through a variety of channels, including print, to alert these individuals about their options, about the flexible, different deadlines that this institution is being flexible on. And they're just trying to communicate as widespread as possible. But this enrollment leader acknowledged that like the real work is actually right now being done at the individual level. And that is just resource constraint, like times 8,000 at that point, or however many undergrads, right? Like you are enrolling.
I just completely agree. I think that point is so spot on. We had that conversation internally, and there are things that can be done by marketing. And again, I'll share some examples of what we're doing. But by far, at this late in the game, this is a one-to-one conversation. This is about relationships more than it is about marketing. And it's about understanding each individual's situation. The good news is when it comes to like admitted no deposit, those pools are typically relatively small, so they're workable. But like we're talking about getting on the phone and getting and texting and individual emailing more than just marketing. And we can layer in some marketing, but I just totally agree that like this is personal and this is one-to-one, not just one-to-many. And I don't know that everybody understands that right now, that like putting out a post on Facebook's great, but like this is really about picking up the phone and calling a parent or a student and having a 20-minute conversation. And that's extremely hard to do with limited resources. Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you're recommending to your partners?
So I'm seeing it in three buckets. The first, and you just mentioned it really well, I think there's I call it educate and engage. Well, first, educate is just like what is going on. You have to remember that, a lot of students are first generation, and even for all students, they've never been through this before. Like even parents who might have a second or third child going to college, this is new territory for everybody. So, education around the deadlines is key. So constant communication of we've pushed the deadline. You may be even still accepting applications this year when you normally would have cut that off. So that first side of education, but the second is like what's going on. And so I've seen some institutions doing a great job of educating around FAFSA in general, like not just why you should come to our school, but like not every communication should be a hard sell. Let's just educate and engage people and give parents information because like we collectively need that. So that's the first, is educate and engage, that I think is key. A couple ways that I've seen that done that I think are really powerful. Offering financial aid open houses or webinars is really great right now. I've seen 2 institutions doing that fully in Spanish, which I love to see. So for parents that maybe are not, English as a first language, they're able to attend an open house entirely in Spanish about financial aid. I think that was really, really smart. And so like financial aid webinars and open houses, as well as obviously email campaigns, extended web updates around educate and engage, that's important. The second category after educate and engage to me I've seen is nurture and support. And that goes back to those relationships. A couple of the key ones I'll call it that I think are really interesting. This is the biggest takeaway of this whole podcast. If you all do nothing else, send plain text emails, ideally from your head of enrollment. And I mean like no HTML, no code, no banner, no nice graphics. Write an email that just is from your head of admissions to the parent, ideally, if you have it, or the student if you don't, and just say, I was reviewing our files. I saw that you've been admitted, but you haven't yet deposited. I wanted to personally reach out and make sure that my team has been supportive and your questions have been answered. By doing that, it allows them to feel like someone personally cares. And here's the key thing. When they respond, you actually have to respond as an individual. So you can send that as a mass tool. You can use marketing automation to send a mass email out to everybody, make it look one-to-one, and then the responses actually are. We typically get open rates of 50 to 65%, sometimes higher on those emails, and we'll get response rates in the hundreds. It's huge, but what happens is then the head of admissions can get those emails, forward it to the folks that are assigned those students. They can say, my boss passed along your information. I'd love to chat with you. But you have to use marketing to facilitate one-on-one conversations. So plain text emails more than anything else, I think, on the nurture and support. The second thing is you have to go old school. Like we got to do call-a-thons and we got to do texting, and like a call-a-thon of like, we're going to call all, 3,000 admitted students kind of a thing, that where possible, and this is extremely hard to do, but I've seen it done, make sure those calls are not just coming from admissions, but they're coming from people connected to the student. So if the student wants to play in a certain athletic program, make that call from the coach. Can we occasionally get a dean or a president to pick up the phone and call? Like this is like political fundraising kind of a play right now. Like I would genuinely encourage folks to like get in a room for a full day Friday, clear your calendars and just start calling. Voicemails from a professor in the program you want to go to really matters this late in the game. And then the third one I would say is, and this is hard to do this late, is build the brand. I think this is where folks are thinking marketing helps, but the problem is it's a little late. And so you can't expect brand to make a massive difference, but you can expect brand to support it. And so to me, the one that people miss the most is boosting organic social content. You can do that towards lists. You can pull your admitted student list. And so I would heavily boost organic social content. If your list is large enough, I would do paid social ads against it. You just want to be top of mind. If your list is even large enough, you got to be north of 10,000. You could do retargeting with streaming. You can send that where you're hitting, literally hitting folks' televisions. But like whatever you can do from a brand perspective, it does not hurt to right now be seen as high quality and high value. That is important, but that's like a layer on. And not even close to as important as picking up the phone and calling these students and sending those plain text emails. So those are kind of how I thought of it, like educate and engage, nurture, support, build the brand. At a high level, those are at least kind of the initial conversations that we've been having with folks.
Yeah, I love the way you categorized that and broke it down. And, I think the component here that needs to sit at the foundation is flexibility. Considering extending deadlines where it makes sense to accommodate the students who've been affected, publicizing them, right? That's where some mass marketing, we can lean into that a little bit more, but publicizing those extensions very clearly and ensuring that those students are aware and then on the other side have time to take whatever actions are necessary. I was talking to another institution a couple of days ago who said that they've actually really gone out of their way to add in more programming over the summer, both on campus and virtual, to support all of this too. So various workshops, you mentioned webinars. I love that you have a customer who's doing one in Spanish. That makes a ton of sense. Like at this point, institutions have the data in their CRM that they know who these impacted students are, and finding the commonalities like, hey, like X% are Spanish speaking, so we need to target them a little bit differently, right? Find those commonalities that are either demographic or behavioral based and ensure that you're communicating with these specific pockets of students, right? For some, it's going to be off-hour webinars that are a little weird for your staff, but make sense for the students because they're thinking about this on the weekend in the afternoon.
or it's adding in some additional dates to your orientations or workshops on your campus, especially if you're drawing from a more localized population, in order to make sure that the resources are there, right? And you can record those things, you can repurpose those things, you can repackage those things.
I love that. I think that's really important. One other one that I've seen folks doing is financial aid one-on-ones and really encouraging those conversations. Every institution does that, but not everyone promotes it and calls it that. So it's like if you call it financial aid, they'll always schedule time to chat with you. But like the idea is like actually offering that. And one of the reasons I think that is key is, when it comes to sales and marketing, there's sort of a classic saying of like, oh, always give someone something to say no to. Like there's always a call to action, but the call to action can't just be deposit, because there's a pocket of this population that is not ready to deposit despite the deadline. And so like for those that are ready to deposit, you want to push that. Obviously let them know that they need to deposit. There's room for them still in this fall. You can always use like a little bit of a scarcity communication, sense of urgency communication. Those are powerful sales tools. But for the population that is like, hey, we're still waiting to get other information, we're not ready, you have to give them something else. And so I loved all the things you listed. I love financial aid one-on-ones or open houses. This is the year to do an admitted student day far later into almost even really summer, where you normally would be doing a new student orientation in the summer. Like maybe you're going to do an admitted student experience as well. All those things are right. And I think it's just more is better. And I hate to say, because normally I'm like a more is more person. So like we should do less. But in this case, it's a little bit spaghetti at the wall. And it's like, know your resources, collectively understand what you think will have the biggest impact, and then make that decision. And that'd be probably my final thought for us is there's a thing called t-shirt sizing, where you look at a project and you say, like, what's the effort to go into this small, medium, large, extra large? And what's the potential impact? Small, medium, large, extra large. It's a software technique usually. It's a great tool in this moment because we're not short of all the things we could do, but we're short of the resources to do them. So like get your team in the room, list the 20 things and have everybody t-shirt size it and figure out what are the things that are a small or medium input that's going to drive XL output. And for the other things that are going to be XL input, like maybe we don't do that because we can't do it all. But we got to do as close to it all as we possibly can right now because we just don't know where that gap's going to close. And I will say it's closing every day, which is great. And the hope is that these students are not lost. They're just deciding late. But, time will tell officially where we'll land.
Yeah, Seth, we'll have to do a check-in later this summer to see where institutions are at. But, I think it's been probably a falsehood that summers are quiet in higher ed, but certainly this is not going to be a quiet summer this year.
Yeah, not at all.
No, not at all. And on that note, we wrap up another episode of The Pulse. This Thursday, you can hear the final episode in our Learning from Leaders Pulse Check series. Elias Martinez, AVP for University Marketing at Texas State University, joins host Carrie Phillips to talk collaboration, why it matters in marketing, and strategies to help build collaboration within your team. This is the perfect wrap-up to this 5-part series, and I know you will not want to miss it. The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.